Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome 1998 President Ihor Kunash.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Bonjour, mesdames et messieurs. Buenos días, damas y caballeros. Доброго дня, пани и панове. I'm Ihor Kunash, 1998 SME President. Thank you very much. Nous sommes très heureux que vous avez décidé de venir vous réchauffer un petit peu à Minneapolis et d'éviter le réchauffement global. De toute façon, nous vous souhaitons une chaude bienvenue à la réunion annuelle de notre société minière, métallurgique et d'exploration, une société qui réunit les plus grandes organisations et les plus brillants professionnels qui représentent l'industrie minière du monde. Notre société est la plus importante source mondiale d'informations minières et de technologie. Nous vous invitons à découvrir ces possibilités. Profitez-en. Nous sommes convaincus que cette conférence vous donnera en premier lieu l'opportunité de découvrir de nouvelles techniques minières et métallurgiques et de trouver de nouvelles cibles d'exploration, et ensuite de renouer les contacts avec vos anciens amis professionnels et d'en faire de nouveaux. Nous sommes convaincus que vous apprécierez cette réunion et nous vous souhaitons beaucoup de succès. Damas y caballeros, les deseamos un gran bienvenida a nuestros vecinos, tanto cercanos y lejanos, a la reunión anual de nuestra famosa Sociedad de Minería, Metalurgia y Exploración. Estamos muy felices que han decidido de abandonar sus países tropicales para venir a Minneapolis, de gozar un poco del verdadero calentamiento global. Nuestra sociedad reúne a las mejores organizaciones y las más brillantes mentes que representan a la industria de la minería en todo el mundo. La sociedad cuenta con las más completas fuentes de información sobre minería, tecnología en el mundo, y aprovéchenlas. Estamos seguros de que esta reunión les ofrecerá la oportunidad de conocer nuevas tecnologías, aprender algo de varios proyectos de exploración y tener la oportunidad de encontrar sus antiguos y nuevos amigos. De todo modo, sabemos que disfrutarán mucho de esta reunión y les deseamos mucho éxito. Пані і панове, щирий привіт на річному з'їзді Всеамериканського товариства гірництва, металургії і георозвідки. Протягом багато років товариство стало найбільшим у світі джерелом технічної інформації гірничих робіт. Запрошуємо вас використати ці можливості. Ми знаємо, що ця щорічна зустріч дасть вам можливість познайомитися з новими технологіями, довідатися про різні георозвідувальні проєкти і з'єднатися з вашими давними професійними друзями, які рівно спілкуватися з новими спеціалістами. Бажаємо вам великих успіхів. Ladies and gentlemen, I haven't forgotten you. Welcome to the annual meeting of the internationally renowned Society of Mining, Metallurgy and Exploration in Minneapolis, where our friends from Canada and the northern countries will have the opportunities to experience a little global warming, and for our friends from tropical paradises, a little global cooling. Our society brings together the largest organizations and brightest professional minds which represent the mining industry around the world. Over the years, the Society has become the world's largest source of mining and technological information. Take advantage of these resources during this meeting. We know that this annual meeting will give you the opportunity to make mining organizations specialists that are on the forefront of innovative technology in mining, metallurgy, and to discover new exploration targets. During this meeting, as always, you will reconnect with your old friends and most certainly develop new professional ties. And we know that you will enjoy this meeting and wish you great success. Willkommen, benvenute, Yukoso SME, Huan Ying SME, and now please welcome Jess Kindler, President of EPI Rock, this conference's sponsor. Jess?
you, sir. Good morning, all. I'm Jess Kindler, President of the Mining Service Division for Epiroc, and I'm also the Chairman of the M&E Executive Committee this year at SME. I'm very grateful to have the opportunity to introduce my new company, Epiroc, to you all this morning, and we're also very thankful that we had the opportunity to sponsor this year's conference. Epiroc is a new company coming from the mining and rock excavation business area of Atlas Copco. The goal of splitting the companies was to provide focus. So we'll have a focused board of directors and a industry focus on infrastructure, mining, and civil engineering products. The goal is to make Epiroc bring the strengths from Atlas Copco that we already had, but to make ourselves more agile and be able to bring innovations and technologies to market even faster. So with that, we want to be our customers' first choice, and we really want to be seen as your technology partner and in bringing innovations, batteries, automation, connectivity, and asset management, both surface and underground. So with that, thank you very much for the opportunity to sponsor, and welcome to the SME 2018 annual meeting. I have a short video of Epiroc. Thank you again.
And now I would like to welcome one of the many successors as SME President. Please give a warm welcome to the 2017 SME President, John Mansanti.
Good morning. My name is John Mansanti. I'm the 2017 SME President and CEO of Crystal Peak Minerals. I assume they exist, but I can't think of anything more humbling than following somebody who can do an address in multiple languages. You are your blessing to our society, and thank you for your welcoming speech. During the 2015 strategic plan, we established 3 values for our society. Values: remember first, professional excellence, and innovation. And many times we either start our functions with a safety share or value share. I like to focus on value shares because safety is just another value as far as I'm concerned. What's impressive about today and this convention is it supports our value of innovation. I think the whole theme that we will see here today is supportive of that. This is a true embodiment of an organization's culture. It occurs when the stated values are manifest in actual behaviors. In 2017, the Planning Committee assembled a respected group of panelists that also manifest SME's value of innovation. I hope you're as eager to hear what they say as I am. Further to values and behavior, there's a motivational axiom that says, you get the behavior you reward. I am pleased to share with you in 2017, the SME established the Robert E. Murray Innovation Award, Lecture and Scholarship. This award recognizes individuals or enterprises that successfully, and focus on successfully, this isn't about ideas, this is about practices, proven innovation. Technologies in their operations, especially in areas of robotics, autonomous operation, artificial intelligence, machine learning, and things of that nature. The Innovation Award winner will also be a lecturer at next year's Keynote and will be embedded into our programs as we go forward. In addition to that, the Murray family has also added a $5,000 scholarship to support innovation at the student level. And so I'd like a round of applause for the Murray family and this great support to our society. And I'm not sure if Ryan's out there. Ryan, please stand and be recognized. Thank you. We have planned another great conference this year, and our committee's done a super job. I think there's a lot of apprehension coming to Minnesota. It's been great so far, and it'll be even better as we go forward. So far, we have 4,707 in attendance, and we expect to grow throughout the rest of the week. Our technical programs include 106 sessions, and we have more than 550 exhibiting companies. There's always housekeeping issues, and I have a few before we proceed, before we get into the meat and potatoes of the keynote. First, it's everybody's responsibility to familiarize yourself with the surroundings. Understand where the main exit is, the side exits, and have an egress plan so if that proverbial crap does happen, you know how to get out of here. Also determine the closest house phone relative to your location. Second, unfortunately, we can't take anything for granted these days. And if you see anything suspicious whatsoever, report that to SME staff. You can tell who they are by their badges. There's also house phones in the convention center. They actually have a number above them that allow you to contact the security center. And so feel free to use those. They're located next to every elevator on each floor. Third, one of the things that's different this year is the SME has uploaded an emergency action plan. That's actually part of the conference app, so I suggest you familiarize yourself with that as well. And you heard it at the beginning, but finally, if you have a cell phone, put it on stun, please. So at this point, I'd like to introduce one of our guests. Congressional leaders refer to Congressman Rick Nolan as a political force of nature. He is known as one of the most powerful speakers and debaters in public life today, and one of the most respected and accomplished leaders in Congress. We have the opportunity to have him before us today. In fact, he has been cited in Washington Post as one of the top 10 most effective Congress members, Democrat or Republican. The great thing is Rick Nolan is an Iron Range native, a Minnesotan through and through. Rick hunts, fishes, taps maple syrup in the spring, picks wild rice in the fall, and he actually tells Finn and Ole jokes. He and his wife, Mary, have a huge garden, and they share the bounty with their friends, neighbors, and family. He's a self-made businessman of 32 years who knows how to create new jobs, how to balance the books, to meet a payroll, and deliver for his customers. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Congressman Rick Nolan.
Well, thank you for that welcome. My mother would have been proud of it. I'm not sure it's true, but what about, to get this thing started off right, I suppose I should say Guten Morgen, Buenos Dias, Sabah al Khair. That's kind of harsh. That's Arabic for good morning. I want to welcome everybody here to Minnesota. We're a proud state, and as one of my colleagues said, one of the better hidden secrets around the world for the quality of our life and the quality of our living. And as was pointed out, I am a fifth-generation Iron Ranger, and we speak Iron Range, or Northeast Minnesotan up there. And we're proud people, and we're proud to call ourselves mining country. And it's not just because of the jobs. For us, it's a way of life. It's something we're very, very proud of. We like to think that we contribute enormously to the well-being of this country and to our world. We like to think and have been told we were the source of the iron ore and the steel that helped us win 2 world wars against some pretty challenging and evil forces in the world at that time. We like to think we're a part of the progress in America that has taken place in recent generations. If you think about it, in my grandfather's time, the life expectancy in this country was 47 years of age. That's right. And today, it's almost 80 years of age. And make no mistake about it, a big part of that was the technology, the harnessing of the mineral resources that we were blessed with in this country to be put into 100,000 different ways that expanded and improved our lives, created the largest middle class anywhere in the history of the world, a nation that became a model for the rest of the world to want to emulate and to become like and more like. And don't forget for 1 minute that mining and all of those mineral resources and all of the technologies associated with that are so vital, not just to Minnesota's Iron Range and Minnesota, but to our entire country, to our national security, to our national economy. I don't know how many of you are aware of a Homeland Security study that was done recently. And I bring it up because I'm surprised how many people are unaware of it. But that study concluded that 13% of the nation's gross national product comes out of Lake Superior. And it enters into the Great Lakes through the locks at Sault Ste. Marie. 13%. And most of that is iron ore from Minnesota's Iron Range. And that study concluded that if those locks failed at Sault Ste. Marie, because that's how all that ore and all those minerals get into the Great Lakes, it would create a national depression. It would put millions and millions of people out of work. Because that ore, those minerals, they supply the steel mills, they supply the automobile industry, they supply the heavy industrials, they supply the appliance manufacturers. They are the heart of our economy. In fact, that study concluded that if the states that make up the Great Lakes were a nation, it'd be the 4th largest economy in the world. Some have suggested maybe that's not a bad idea. Thought about it myself. Now, we're all proud Americans. We're all in this thing together. But we got to remember, and we got to remind ourselves where, why, and how these things happen, and where they come from, and how important they are to all of us. And that's why, among other things, we have wonderfully bipartisan support in the Congress of the United States to upgrade and to repair the locks at Sault Ste. Marie. Who would think such a little thing could be so critical to our entire way of life, mining and the improvement in the quality of life in particular? That's why we have military protection there at those locks. And make no mistake, they are obsolete. And we're getting more and more money every year to do the studies and to do the repairs that are necessary to be able to accommodate the next generation of Lakers and shipments. So that's just one little aspect of how important mining is to our entire nation. And the simple truth is that Minnesota's Iron Range is the largest source of iron ore in this country or in North America. And make no mistake about it, the Duluth Complex is similarly one of the largest resources and sources of a whole wide range of ores, and copper and nickel and cobalt and all the gold and silver. I mean, the list goes on, including the rare elements that are so essential for our economy and for our future. In fact, one Commerce Department study found that of what are come to be known as the rare earth elements, we're importing about somewhere in the neighborhood of anywhere from 59 to as high as 99% of 20 of those, and we have them all right here up in Minnesota's Iron Range. Wow, that's important to note, and I'll tell you why more here in just a few minutes. So, but it's also to be noted that northern Minnesota is a wonderfully beautiful area. I spent 32 years in the export trading business, selling U.S. goods around the world, so I got a pretty good look at the rest of the world and how it works. People from time to time have asked me what I sold, and I point out to them everything except for guns and drugs, which is where the real money was. But I managed to make a living, and from time to time I proved some things that were not possible. I put together an offshore oil drilling program, offshore Abu Dhabi, the richest oil field in the world. I had 360,000 acres, competed with everybody in the world for it, secured it, blew $60 million proving what could not be done. We couldn't find any oil. It just wasn't possible. Wasn't possible. But in any event, in getting to around and to see some of the rest of the world and how it works and how it operates, I'll go back to that here in just a few minutes. But back to the Boundary Waters. What a precious, pristine, incredibly most beautiful area. I'm proud to say that I was one of the sponsors of the legislation that created it, and also worked along with the Voyageurs National Park and several other of the national parks. They're so important. I have a daughter who was diagnosed with stage 4, a very advanced stage 4 lung cancer. And what did she want to do? She didn't want to go to Paris, no offense to the French. She didn't want to go to Disney World. She didn't want to go to Hong Kong. She wanted to go up into the Boundary Waters with her mom and her dad and her family. That's how important that is to us and to the rest of the country. But I want you to know that northern Minnesota, with all of our lakes, all of our rivers, all of our water-rich economy, all of our forests, all of our national parks, we have coexisted with mining for 130 years, and we have the cleanest water anywhere in this country and in the state of Minnesota. That's a fact. Because we know how to do these things right. And we're committed to doing these right. Just things right, just as everybody else in this room is. And I got to tell you, believe it or not, there's some advances and some, not some advances, there's some advantages to growing old and age. Gives you a little bit of a perspective on things. When I was a kid, my God, the rivers were running sewers. The lakes were catching on fire. Acid rain was destroying our forests. We were dumping taconite tailings into Lake Superior. Hell, we had to haul water in from someplace else to get drinking water in the town of Duluth, on the shores of the greatest freshwater lake anywhere in the world. And that's when the environmental movement began. And guess what? There were a lot of people who said, oh, we can't have all these environmental rules and regulations and standards because nobody will be able to do business. And by God, and I was there, I can tell you, we put together bipartisan majorities, included Democratic leaders like Tip O'Neill and Kennedy's and Richard Nixon, and we put together some standards and some rules to protect our environment. Wow. And it's amazing. We showed that we had faith in technology. We had faith in science. We had faith in progress. And guess what? My God, it was amazing. You know, we came up with catalytic converters to help abate the sulfur that was destroying our forests. We came up with reverse osmosis, you know, to filter water. By the way, they came from Minnesota. Water Engineering developed the first high-pressure pump to handle coarse waters. Company by Filmtech developed the first films. You can filter a virus through those, whatever you want. How many parts per million sulfur do you want? You want 300 parts? We can do that. You want 200 parts? We can do that. You want 10 parts? We can do that. You want 0? We can do that. So let's just use our science to find a standard that will work to protect our precious environment and do that. I witnessed it work because we put our faith in you. We put our faith in industry and science and technology. That doesn't mean that we still don't have work to do. Of course we do. But guess what? Now today there's a new narrative out there. The new narrative says, oh, we can't have business, we can't have industry, we can't have mining, because then we won't have an environment. Well, guess what? That narrative earlier on was wrong, and that narrative today is wrong. We have the science, the brains, the technology to do both, and without one, you don't have the other. We're going to do it, and we're going to continue to do both, because it's noble, it's good, it's promising, and it's the best interest of this country and of the world. Thank you. But I tell you, it's challenging. Oh, the misinformation that is out there. You know, fear is a very powerful political tool. And there are people telling out there, you know, somehow we're going to destroy the world. No. We're increasing the quality of life in this world. We're increasing the life expectancies in this world. Polymet is a good example, though, of the misinformation that's out there. One of my colleagues said, you know, Rick, I can't vote for this land exchange bill that'll facilitate bill because my constituents are worried about the boundary waters. So I said, well, you know, I'm glad they're worried about the boundary waters. They should be worried about the boundary waters. That's something we got to protect. But I said, you know, in case you weren't paying attention in your science class, and I know a lot of you weren't, not in this room, but there's a thing called the Continental Divide. Well, here, I got a map. Let me show you. Here it is. Here's the boundary waters. And you'll note that that's north of the Continental Divide. And oh, by the way, here's North Shore Mining. Been there for 60 years. Hasn't hurt the boundary waters. But here's Polymet. That's on the other side of the Continental Divide. Unless they know something the rest of the world doesn't know, water doesn't flow uphill. Never has. Never will. Surface water, underground water. So please, do me a favor. Just tell them if they're worried about the boundary waters, there's no way Polymet can affect the boundary waters. If they're worried about the St. Louis, South, that's another issue. But it can't affect the boundary waters. Well, gee, Nolan, I can't vote with you because I'm worried about the boundary waters. What do you do with stuff like that? You know? And then the consultants tell you the more you protest the false narrative, the more people believe the false narrative. Okay? So you get yourself into this quandary. Somebody comes up and says, well, you know, I'm not against mining, I'm against this fast track mining, you know, where you just approve everything. Really? Where's this happening? It's not in America. Polymet spent $200 million. They've been going for 12 years and they're not done yet. They've had to go through reviews and approvals. My God, the list is a mile long. I don't know if I can get them all. You know, you got the Environmental Protection Agency, you got the Army Corps of Engineers, you got Forestry, you got Fish and Wildlife, you got the U.S. Interior, you got the U.S. Department of Agriculture, you got the State of Minnesota Department of Natural Resources, you got the State Department of Pollution Control Agency, you got consultation with the Native tribes, with the American people. You call that fast track? Holy cow. I can't imagine what your slow track looks like. You know, how do you deal with that kind of a narrative? Twin metals, another project that's being proposed for northern Minnesota, copper nickel mining. Well, I don't think we can just approve it. Who said anybody's going to just approve it? They're going to have to go through that same process. And it's long, and they're going to have to prove that they can do it and do it right, and they will, I believe. More importantly, they have to be given the chance, as does everybody else in America, be given the chance, the opportunity that they can do these mines, that they can do this business, they can do this manufacturing, they can do this industry in a way that's environmentally favorable to the rest of the environment. They can't do it. So what's wrong with that? Nothing. It's worked fine in the past, and it's going to continue to work fine in the future. And quite frankly, I think we got to start telling our environmental friends what the real choice is, okay? Because make no mistake about it, human degradation and exploitation is wrong. Environmental exploitation is wrong and unacceptable. But it doesn't matter where it is occurring. And we have to tell our friends, it's time you start questioning the ethics of wanting all the benefits of iron ore, of strategic minerals, of rare earth minerals, and all of the quality enhancing aspects of life that flow from that, but you're comfortable getting it from a mine somewhere in a third world country with 6-year-old kids going underground, no environmental rules, no health and safety rules, no environmental rules and regulations. So you're comfortable with that? So you can enjoy the benefits of mining? You better question the ethics and the morality of that. And I'll take it a step further. Some of you have read, you've all read, about the war in Afghanistan. I don't know how many of you read about the backstory on that and the fact that in many respects it's about rare earth and strategic minerals. The president came out and said it here a couple weeks ago. We're going to have to stay in that war so that we can assure our access to Afghans' minerals. And that story has been written before. I know it's not a big front page story, but the president came out and acknowledged it. So, okay, getting back to the ethics and the morality of this thing, better start questioning yourself. How many trillions of dollars is that worth? How many tens of thousands of lives is that worth? So that we can get cheap minerals exploited in Afghanistan when we can do it here and we can do it right and become a model for the rest of the world and show them how it's supposed to be done. These are the, thank you. So those are some of the great choices and challenges that we have ahead of us. I want to compliment this association, and I want to say something about your importance, not just for the vast knowledge and information that you exchange with one another that helps facilitate one another and make the greater good better than the addition of any sum total of its parts. That's important. But I want to caution you to maintain your awareness of the fact that the conditions under which you work and operate and do your business are in no small measure determined by the attitudes out there in the general public and by the politicians who write those rules and write those policies, and the bureaucrats who write those rules and those policies. And I got to remind you, just about everything is affected by politics. If you don't like it, get over it, okay? The time of day is a political decision. That's right. It's the government decided to roll the clock back and move it forward. The chemicals that went into your shampoo this morning, in your hair, that's a political decision. Guess what? The fabric in my clothing is not flammable. That's a political decision. I don't care. You turn left, right, forward, backwards, wherever you go. So if you want to have something to say about your life, about your country, about your world, about your job, about your opportunities, get involved in your politics. Know who your congressman is. Know where they stand on the great issues of our time. Know who your state representatives and senators and governors are. Know who's heading up your individual agencies. Because I'll tell you what, if you don't, only one of two things can happen, okay? We get a parade of people going through our offices all day long. One thing that can happen is Congress or your legislature doesn't know you exist, okay? That's not any good. Worse yet, they know you exist and think you don't care. You can't have that. You can't have that. Because there's another old saying in political circles. You're either going to be at the table or you might be on the menu. And you don't want to be there. You do not want to be on the menu. So let me just sum it up by saying, once again, as we have said in the past, and as we have to keep saying forever on through our future, reminding ourselves that politics, business, economics, quality living, in one measure is about gratitude, given back in some degree commensurate with what we have received, but it's also recognition that politics, business, is not a destination. It's a journey. It's a journey that is never over. The minute you start taking your progress for granted, you're in trouble. And the minute you forget about having to pay it forward and carry it on into the future, you're in trouble. So embrace that. Embrace the notion that what we do in mining for the world, for all of humanity, is noble, that it is vital, that it is a part of the grand march toward the improvement of humanity all over the world. So let's get busy. And thank you for coming to Minnesota to help get started on this important conference. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Congressman Nolan. Appreciate your time here today and your words in support of our industry. Thank you. Now, I would like to introduce the moderator of today's session, Frank Bascalero. Frank co-anchors the 5 p.m., 6 p.m., and 10 p.m. news Monday through Friday at WCCO. He was awarded the 2011 and 2012 Regional Emmy and Best Anchor. Growing up in Denver, Frank attended the United States Air Force Academy, and before transferring to the University of Colorado Boulder, he later studied broadcasting at Columbia College in Chicago. Please welcome Frank.
Appreciate that. Hi, everybody. Good morning. Welcome to Minnesota. Congressman, thank you for doing us so proud, making everyone feel so welcome here. So if you're wondering about what is going on outside, we're setting a little history. We have about 43 inches of snow this year, and you people are so fortunate that we have the most snow on the ground right now than we have in 10 years. I went and checked with our meteorologist today, and if that makes you sad that there's not more, you should have been here in 2014 because we had 70 inches. So I don't know, Igor, if it's global warming or if you're in a really sweet spot, but it's going to be 40 this week and there's snow. So go skiing, enjoy Minnesota, have the best time you can possibly have here because we have all kinds of great things to offer. I promise you I'll try to keep things moving today. I know you want to get to the speakers, so let me just tell you about the purpose of the session and we'll move forward. We want to highlight today the importance of the industrial innovation, including the mining sector. What does innovation mean locally? What does it mean nationally? What does it mean internationally for the promotion of sustainable production of minerals, both here in this country and across the world? We'll cover innovation with respect to both technology and social responsibility in developed and developing regions across the globe. And we'll do that by introducing some great speakers. The program will begin with a short presentation from each of our panelists here today, and then we'll have a group discussion following that. We have some index cards as well that should be floating around in the audience. So if you have some questions, please go ahead and write your question down, and we'll get that to the side of the row, and some of the SME staff will come and pick it up, and we'll try to get to your questions as well. But we want to begin because we have a lot of very interesting and qualified folks here. The first today, and these are in no particular order, is Rene Aguilar. Rene is Vice President of Corporate Affairs and Sustainability, Antofagasta Minerals Group. He joined Antofagasta Minerals in the beginning of 2017. Before Rene joined Antofagasta, he was the global head of safety with Anglo American PLC, and before that, he was the health and safety director with ICMM, the International Council on Mining and Metals. Both positions he served were based out of London. Rene also worked for 12 years with Codelco in Chile in the areas of safety, health, sustainability, and corporate affairs. And we had a very interesting conversation with him this morning when we found out that in 2010, Rene was appointed to be in charge of the rescue of the 33 miners trapped at the San Jose mine in Chile. He holds degrees in industrial psychology from the University of Valparaiso, a master's degree in human resources from the University Adolfo Ibáñez, and an MBA from the University Católica de Chile. Rene has more than 20 years' experience in mining. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Rene Aguilar.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you, Frank, for that introduction. It is my pleasure to be here in Minnesota. I came in yesterday from a very, very sunny and warm Chile. I was told that the weather is fine here, so I could imagine what a winter it is. Jesus. All right, today I'm going to be talking briefly about Antofagasta, very briefly, and then I'm going to be talking about my thoughts on what innovation means for the mining sector in particular, especially from a sustainability point of view. Antofagasta, it's a UK-listed company. Last week, our market cap was $12 billion. We are part of the FC 100. We've got two big divisions. One is the mining division, and the other one is the transport division. On the mining one, we are part of the top 10 copper producers in the world. We hold 4 operations in Chile, particularly. The largest one, the flagship, is called Los Pelambres, which is in the central part of the country. It produces more than 350,000 tons of copper a year, and is situated in the Andes Mountains at an altitude of roughly 10,000 feet. The other 3 operations are in the northern part of the country, in the middle of the Atacama Desert, which is the driest desert in the world, so we face huge challenges, particularly when it comes to water availability. The other division we've got is transport, and so basically we move all the ore materials and mining materials in the northern part of the territory, not only for Antofagasta in particular, but also for other companies like BHP, Escondida, Codelco, Freeport-McMoRan, among others. In terms of where we are on the copper market, I think we've got here what we call the yin and yang of the mining sector nowadays. We've been seeing a growing demand for copper over the last years. It's true that we had a sort of downturn last year, on the previous years as well, but now we are seeing a new good wave for us. You can see in the mood during this conference, we feel different. We think that China is going to be driving the performance of particularly on the copper sector. They are Their consumption is 50% of the world consumption nowadays, and they continue to grow. There are several projects that have been announced by the China government, and also we are seeing good signs from other emerging economies, particularly from India as well. And lastly, but not least important, is what we call the green economy and what electromobility is going to show us. Nowadays, we've got in the world roughly 3 million electric vehicles. That is equivalent to a little bit more than 170,000 tons of refined copper for those vehicles. We are seeing that in 10 years' time, those electric vehicles will go up to 27 million vehicles, so that will imply that the demand for copper will increase more than 1.5 million tons of copper per year. And that is why we as an industry are quite expecting, what technology is going to say about that. We all know that the use of copper for electric vehicles is high intensive. We are seeing that the use of copper for those vehicles in comparison to the conventional ones is 4 or 5 times higher. So this is, I think, good news. We are still, watching that very carefully, but so far it's looking so good. So that's the good news. And the challenging ones on the right-hand side of that slide, it's basically what you see there. We've got deterioration in the quality of the deposits. As you know, we say that the best day in a mine is the first one. Then everything gets complicated. The ore grade decline, we need to go deeper and deeper. Also, we are facing some challenges regarding productivity. Availability of water is not something that is happening in some countries. I would say that everywhere water is a big issue, particularly on the way we manage the water basins. We've got more expectation on the way mining is contributing to the social and economic development. And also we are seeing a lot of regulatory changes because of new society expectations, as I said before. So what does innovation mean to us? Well, some of my colleagues here this morning are going to be talking about technology and how technology is helping on the mining sector. I completely agree with that. We've been seeing a lot of automation process, teleoperation, as was described on the video at the very beginning of this morning. We have improved safety dramatically over the last years. As you know, our total recordable injury frequency rate has decreased in a very, very high manner over the last decade. I have to say, though, that fatalities remains a challenge. We've been able to reduce total recordable incidents, but fatalities are basically very similar to what were in the past. That is why we, as part of ICMM, are working hard to better understand what are the material risks that are killing still people in the mining sector. And we know that we should be doing better, and I'm sure we should be doing better. Last year, Antofagasta in particular had a fatality-free year, the first time ever. So we are doing big efforts to demonstrate ourselves that it is possible to work fatality-free in the mining sector. So what are we seeing now? What we are seeing that innovation is not only about technology, is not only about automation. We've been asked by society about a new focus, and that is we are calling there the ESG focus. We need to be more aware about the importance that society is bringing to the environment and to the economic benefit or social benefit of the mining sector in particular. This slide is from the International Council on Mining and Metals, ICMM. ICMM brings together the 25 largest mining companies in the world. It's a CEO-led organization, and when they ask civil society, NGOs, communities in general, what were the most serious issues facing the mining industry in the next 5 years, at the very top, it was social acceptance, community engagement, and then environmental concerns. And in those environmental concerns, there were quoting air quality or air pollution, use of water, and land management. Those were the 3 big items that they were highlighting in this particular survey. So how are we doing on that? Do we need to play a role on that? Is mining going to play a role on that? I think yes. In 2015, the world, through United Nations, has agreed on the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. The mining sector is working hard, particularly in Latin America, where I live now, to demonstrate the role that mining is going to play to achieve those goals by 2030. Several mining companies are taking some of those goals and are demonstrating and challenging themselves in order to show the case of mining to get to the place where we need to be regarding a sustainable future. As Congressman Nolan was saying, this is not about mining itself. This is not about the operations. This is about the role that mining is going to play in the sustainable future, and I believe 100% on that. Particularly in this short presentation, I would like to flag the following when it comes to environment and then on the social side. Some changes has been demonstrated in Chile over the last 4 or 3 years. The increase on the non-conventional renewable energies is quite high. There you can see that the solar power has more than doubled over the last 3 years, 7 times over the last 3 years, and the wind power generation has more than doubled over the last 3 years. So we are seeing not an evolution in Chile, particularly on the energy sources, but a revolution, I would say. And solar is getting more and more important, particularly in the northern part of Chile, where we have a very good radiation for solar generation. How is that translated into what we do in the mining sector? So how can we be part of that revolution? Well, in Antofagasta in particular, we agreed on being part of that revolution. Not to be a follower, but to be on the very top of that. That is why we decided in 2014 to build a wind power plant, which is called El Arrayán. And that particular wind power plant is providing energy for our flagship operation in Pelambres. And also we have developed 2 solar plants called Javiera and Conejo, which are in the middle of the Atacama Desert that are providing solar energy for our northern operations. And we also challenge ourselves to look for new alternatives of energy generation in-house, and that is why we are using, particularly in Pelambres, our conveyor belts to produce energy that we are using in the actual site. So this is not only about talking about the role of copper in the sustainable economy, we are also challenging ourselves internally, be innovative, trying to demonstrate that we can also internally operate in a more sustainable way. And these examples are coming from energy. I think it's a good example of what we've been doing in Antofagasta. Also, as I said at the beginning of my presentation, water is a major issue. We have started some decades ago in the north of Chile to use seawater for our processes. Not only desalinated water, but also raw seawater. That, as you know, implies several metallurgical challenges, and I think we have gone through that learning curve, and because of that, we've just inaugurated the mine that I showed at the beginning, Antucoya mine, last year, and that mine in particular is using 100% raw seawater for the processes. In Chile, as you might know, we are a long country, but a very thin one. So the distance between the actual sea and the mine site wouldn't be longer than 200 kilometers. So that's not the problem. The problem is that we need to pump that water from sea level up to 10 feet level. So that's the challenge. So we are going to be seeing more and more use of seawater, particularly in my country, because sea is very close to our operations. We are not going to compete then with community with their continental water, particularly in very high-stress water areas. We also, as highlighted there in the middle, have pioneered a large use of thickened tailing deposits. We think that this is a good alternative for some operations as well, because we are reducing water consumption and we are improving our environmental control and, of course, the stability of the deposits. And finally, in the central part of the country, where water is not a big challenge as it is in the north part of the country, we've got another one, because we've got water, but we need to share that water with the agricultural sector. Okay? We are not that intense on use of water as the agricultural sector, but we need to work in partnership. So rather than saying, I've got my rights to use this water, you've got your rights to use this water, so you should be doing what you need to do, we will be doing what we need to do. We are working together, making sure that the quality of the water is the right one for everybody, and the quantity of water is the right one for everyone. And more on that. Because of the climate change, we've been seeing that in the coming years, climate change, of course, is happening already. So we are expecting to see a decrease on the rainfall for the next decade. So instead of waiting for that year to come, we have decided to install a new desalination plant in the coast of the central part of Chile. We've just been approved by the environmental regulator in our country. So we're going to start building that 400 liters per second desalination plant for the times when we would be expecting a drought, for instance. So we are not going to be affecting the agricultural sector because of the use of water. So we are trying to innovate on that, trying to play ahead of the game and trying to see what is going to come so we can plan accordingly. On the other side, I was talking about the environmental side. On the social side, I think this is very important. In the past, the mining sector, I'm talking about my experience in other mining companies and in ICMM as well. Some years ago, not many decades ago, we were very much trying to work with communities in a one-way sense. Okay, so we thought that we knew what communities needed. We thought that we knew all the good answers. We thought what we knew was what was good for them. And we understand that was not right. So we have put in place a new process, and we have innovated a lot on this one. We have defined what you see there, which are the 5 principles for engagement with the communities. We talk about open dialogue. We talk about collaboration. We talk about traceability. Everything we do has tools and indicators of control. We talk about excellence in the way we deliver our projects. And we talk about transparency. So everybody knows what we are doing. This process has provided us with a very good outcome over the last 3 years, I would say. We have run open forums in Chile to make sure that we are switching from what is on the left-hand side to the right-hand side. In the past, we were talking about compensation all of the time, like we were feeling guilty for being there, but that was not right. We are there to collaborate, to improve the quality of life of the people that live in the surrounded area of the mine sites. So we are moving from compensation to collaboration. We are moving from scatter to urban investment. We are moving from, this is very important, from private interest to common good. We understood at some point that we were liaising with some people in particular, not with the whole community. And sometimes when you do that, you might think that you are doing the right thing, but in reality, you're not working for the common good of the whole community or the whole society. So what we have done is that we have a process of dialogue which emphasizes the importance of each one of the actors during the discussion. So we can agree on what needs to be done all together, and then off we go. And the last one is very important for us. We are not here as the mining sector to replace the role of the state. Okay? Sometimes the mining sector has been asked to fix everything, you know, education, health, sports, facilities, etc. So there is a role that the state needs to play, and there is a role that we need to play. The tricky thing is how to do it in a nice and a smooth way. So what we have done is that we have engaged with the national and local authorities to better understand where the government, where the state wants to go, and where the society, where the community wants to go. And then we share that strategy and we implement that strategy. Having said that, and this is the last slide, we have put in place a project which is called Somos Choapa. In Spanish, that means we are Choapa. Choapa is a valley, a very beautiful valley where Los Pelambres is. So what we have done there is a massive consultation process. We ran more than 61 open forums with people. More than 10,000 people attended that particular forum. We are talking about a population of 80,000 people living there. 10,000 people attended those forums, and they decided with us and with the national government on the projects, on the role that the mine is going to play in the area. It was an open invitation. We share a common vision. We agreed on the projects, and now we are delivering according to that plan. Some of the pictures there reflect what we have done, and I think this is the new way that mining should be working with communities. It's about sharing same principles, it's about sharing values, and it's about making sure that we as miners are doing our best to improve the quality of life of the surrounded communities. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Renee. Our next panelist today is Bob Anderson. Bob is Vice President for Research and Development, 3M. Bob's a senior executive with more than 25 years' experience working for 3M Company, known for driving innovation on an international level. Bob is currently the Research and Development Vice President in a business group that leads the industry in fall protection, reflective materials, traffic safety, graphic design, respirators, and welding helmets. One of Bob's priorities within this business group is product commercialization. Bob's career spans a wide range of responsibilities from sales and marketing to R&D and international management. Ladies and gentlemen, Bob Anderson.
Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here representing 3M and our research and development community. And as we think about our company, we're unusual as a representative here today in a couple of ways, in that we actually make a lot of things outside of mining, but we operate mines. We have 4 mines or quarries around the United States, producing about half of the roofing granules for asphalt shingles in this country and a few other countries in the world. So as a research and development person, it's like having a great big sandbox with really big toys where we get to go and test out equipment and processes that will make those operations safer and more productive, not only for our facilities, but as you'll see, the other product lines that we do, hopefully for you, in fact. So these are pictures from some of the facilities that we operate, and I know they must be models with brand new clothes because they look much too clean, I think, for regular use. So many people know the red 3M logo as a company that stands for safety. And our personal safety business is one of the largest in the company, and I would say one of the most attractive ones to work for in the company. When your mission is to protect people at home, at work, for life, you get dedicated scientists and engineers. And certainly that's an area that we have been successful in. So many different categories over the last 50 years that we've been in the safety business. You can see them represented with their brands here, probably things that you know. In the lower center, you'll see connected safety software. So this is evolving, and that's maybe one thrust of the talk I'm giving this morning, is how we're evolving from a material science and a thing and a widget company into making products and systems that interoperate, and that in the evolving connected world, you'll see why that's so important. Another area that related to mining operations, as I've seen them around the world, is transportation safety. You have a lot of logistics, a lot of transportation needs getting goods and people in and out safely. And we've been, since the first invention of the first reflective traffic sign here 79 years ago in St. Paul, Minnesota, you can see how this has evolved over the course of time to make sheeting materials that are brighter, that are safer. And the science of this endeavor is to understand, how does the human eye see color? How does the human eye see reflected light? And the neurology of how our brain interprets that stimulation. And sometimes we can be overstimulated by too much information coming back to us or too much light. So we've evolved that science into good, safe regulatory practices, and starting in the US and expanding around the world in probably 75 different countries now. So we began with personal safety and how do we protect workers in really dangerous environments, to transportation safety. And now the juncture that we find ourselves at, and I think that many of you in your innovative endeavors find yourselves at too, is how do you bridge these worlds? A very, very materials-driven world that you're helping to extract these valuable minerals from the earth, and into an increasingly digital presence and digital interconnectivity. And new business models, new regulations, new requirements are forming around this each day, each week. Fundamentally, we started as a mining company. I think you've probably heard the story, in Two Harbors, Minnesota, just 2.5 hours north of here, looking for corundum. And when we failed and realized that we had anorthosite, which was a very, very soft material, not useful for grinding wheels in the emerging automotive industry, one has to make lemonade out of lemons. And that's how sandpaper evolved, and this story is now 117 years old or so. So we find ourselves 117 years later at this juncture of materials and digital. And what are we doing about that? So one of the things as innovators, you have to find new talent to wade into these new areas. On the basis of 46 technology platforms, we've now begun to acquire people with skills in machine learning, in digital communication methods, complemented by our traditional chemists, chemical engineering students, material scientists, and increasingly optics. So I'm going to start with just a very quick example of connected roads, which is enabling intelligent infrastructure. So how do we optimize these types of infrastructure that we've already invested in, that human operators already need to be able to see and respect to operate safely, but how do we use those same resources in a digital way to operate safely? In the upper left-hand corner, you see an ordinary stop sign, which looks much like this around the world, red, white, and octagonal, or other types of guide signs at night. That's enhanced for the human vision. Down below, you can see what the computer's able to read off of that same sign. This is not another stop sign or another secondary sign. There's an invisible film laminated to the surface of that sign, allowing the light to come through to me as a human observer. But down below, you can see the metadata that is able to be extracted from that type of sign, the GPS coordinates down to the centimeter. Additional information about when it was installed, or even other information could be dynamically uploaded to that about changing conditions, about road construction ahead, for example. On the right-hand side, you see pavement markings that are optimized not only for driving in wet conditions, but for noon in dry conditions on a white cement road. How is the vehicle going to see that? I know a number of you probably have vehicles today where either your seat vibrates or there's an annoying beep when you cross the center line or you cross the sidelines on a roadway system. These are efforts to enhance that substantially and to accurately allow the vehicles to maneuver in an automated world that we can see in front of us. Closing the risk gap for situational awareness and connected safety is about building an Internet of Things centered on safety. It's about workers, it's about workplaces and workflows, and understanding how not only are workers protected, but the information that we need about their training, the information we need about their certifications, the information we need about the maintenance of the gear that's protecting their health. So this connected safety is an effort around that, where we're evolving from who has seen this type of system before, or who is operating this kind of system today in terms of how we check our fire extinguishers, our first aid kits, and various operations on clipboards and Microsoft Excel, to evolving to a new world where we're able to connect those things through the processes that people are following, but also through the very personal protective equipment that they're wearing. So it's not practical for a set of safety glasses to perhaps to be connected to the internet, like Google Glass, for example, on the extreme cost end of things. But for other types of gear in fall protection, harnesses, on welding helmets, on other types of respiratory protection, it's definitely plausible, and we're now demonstrating these capabilities to protect workers and then harvest the big data that you start to see from this type of environment, which is not only about safety in the end. We're learning about human behavior, and we're learning about being able to predict safe and unsafe environments, but also seeing the telltale signs of productivity or lack of productivity in different operations. And that's really where I would close. Our angle today in applying science to life is how can we advance safety as a company priding ourselves in our safety endeavors and our products, but also at the same time enabling productivity. And as innovators, all of you realize that often the crux of innovation is being able to do two things that sometimes are perceived to be mutually opposed. Productivity and safety may not always mean the same thing to everybody, but how do we increase our technologies? How do we increase the capabilities of products and systems to achieve both those goals at the same time? Thank you very much.
Bob, thank you. Who knew about the stop sign? That was the coolest thing ever. Our next panelist is Christoph Beck. Christoph is Executive Vice President and President Nalco Water for Ecolab, the global leader in water, hygiene, and energy technologies and services that protect people and vital resources. Beck leads Ecolab's $2.9 billion global Nalco Water. Under his leadership, that business provides water and processing technologies and services that help companies across a broad spectrum of industries reuse and recycle water to operate more efficiently, increase productivity, and to minimize water use. Prior to joining Ecolab, Beck was a senior executive at Nestle for 16 years, where he was responsible for major regional and global businesses in several parts of the country and world before leading the European corporate sales division. Earlier in his career, he worked on a space shuttle project for the European Space Agency. Ladies and gentlemen, Christoph Beck.
Hey, good morning. Good to be here. Welcome to Minnesota. I guess everyone is going to move to Minnesota, Congressman, now. We have the best mining operations. We have the best industries. We have the best politicians. We have the best weather, as you've noticed it as well. So it's really the place to come. Well, that's what happened to me 10 years ago. I didn't know about Minnesota, to be honest. I had watched that on TV a little bit, and we arrived with my wife 10 years ago with short pants, a T-shirt, flip-flops in March, coming from Florida. Well, that didn't work out really well, and saying, so where the hell did you bring us? And 10 years later, well, we're still here because we like it, and it's a very special community, a place where we can thrive as people and as industries as well, and that's important. So I'm not a real Minnesotan, and I'm not a real miner either, as you've heard it as well before, but I'm becoming one of them by today. So thanks a lot for being here and for allowing me as well to have the opportunity to share with you how can we work together with the mining industry, but also learning from other industries, basically, to shape better industries in a better world. A place where the next generation, our kids, basically will be proud of us. Because the way we've run our businesses has been sustainable from a financial perspective, but also how we respect the environment and the communities. Because that's what we do as a company. You've heard before, so Ecolab is the mother name of the overall company. A company, when I joined it, was a $4 billion company. We are $14 billion last year, really focused on becoming the global leader in water, in process, in energy services and technologies to do exactly that, helping companies and businesses strive while protecting natural resources and the environment. We have roughly 48,000 people that are serving over 1 million customer locations anywhere around the world. And I'll give you a little bit more insights about it in a second. But talking about innovation, well, the R&D component, like it's the case in the previous companies we've heard just before, well, is absolutely core to what we do. And we have 1,600 people in R&D, supported by pretty solid budgets that are growing as well, so pretty fast. And really, so developing new products, new solutions by the day. And we have over 8,000 patents today that are really driving our business and our customer operations. But what's more important is basically that our research is not only based in central research in the US, but we have also 19 technical centers and local R&D centers around the world to really understand what are the market needs, what do customers truly need, and how can we develop solutions for them locally in a way that's most effective as well for that local operation. And I'll give you a few examples as well towards the end of my presentation. But what's most important is that we don't see our R&D organization as our organization. We see that as your organization. It's really an organization that you can leverage, that you can live with, that you can develop product and solution together. That's the way we want to look at it. So try to take as much advantage as you can from that very unique organization. And especially driven by the fact that mining is an important industry that we serve. But we serve 19 other industries as well out there, so we can learn from each other. And that's what we do as a company. When you think about it, so we serve this 1 million customer location out there, but it can be from hotels to hospitals to car manufacturing to electronics, but it can be power generating plants, it can be chemical plants, it can be deep water offshore drilling operation in the Gulf of Mexico, and each of them are run by a separate business unit, a group of experts, really so people who understand what are the real needs, how does it work, but at the same time share all the practices across all the different industries. And it's always the same model that we have. It can be in a mine, like it can be in a hospital or in a nuclear plant. It's an expert from that industry supported by what we call connected chemistry. I'll come back to that, digital technology and information in order to help our partners produce more products, better products with less natural resources, mostly water and energy, which means a better impact to the environment, and ultimately, what's most important, for a better bottom line as well. Because running sustainable operations, as we all know, well, is not only good for your bottom line, but it's also possible to do it in a way which is good for the environment and is good as well, so for your shareholder. And we especially focused on water, and that's why. We've heard it so many times as well, so from René a little bit early on. Well, we have a problem. We have a real problem in terms of water if we look at just a few facts. Today, the world, the planet, uses as much water, fresh water in that case, as nature can replenish. We're more or less at break even. Well, that's kind of the good news. There's another good news is that in the next 10, 12 years, by 2030, we'll have 1 billion more kids that are going to join the planet. That's all great news, naturally. They're going to consume more. They're going to change their diet as well, moving more towards proteins from cereal-based meals as well. That all requires more water. And the bottom line is, if we look at all the trends, we will need, as a society, 40% more water than what we use today in the next 12 years. Well, if we are break-even today, this means this 40% more water does not exist. So we'll have to deal with it. And how do we do it? Well, it's only by reusing and recycling water as much as we can. And if we think in terms of manufacturing environment, in the same time frame, it will not grow by 40%, but by 400%. So industry has an even bigger interest in managing water the right way. And if we look at the CDP disclosure from the last few years, in 2015, as you can see, so while the damages were close to 3 billion for the US industry, it grew to 14 billion in 2016. And with all what happened the last 12 months, basically, in this country, well, it's going to be following more or less the same trend, which is a big issue. And interestingly enough, as a company, we also are trying to measure how much do we help our customers save water. And we've made this commitment that by 2030, we will help the world save 300 billion gallons of water. That's the equivalent annual drinking need of 1 billion people out there, which is roughly the number of people not having access to clean water. And we are more or less halfway. Since last year, we helped our customers save over 180 billion gallons of fresh water. So it's really significant. What we do together can truly move the needle and help us get in a place where we can produce more products with less water and less natural resources generally. And I know I don't need to convince you, because 70% of the mines around the world are in water-stressed or extremely water-stressed area. We've heard it as well before, and that's something that we need to address, and that's something we can address. That's been the case in Minnesota. That's been the case as well in Chile. That's the case that could be as well in other places around the world. So there's a bunch of challenges, naturally. We don't have enough water. The quality of the water is going down. Environmental protection becomes a bigger issue as well for the right and the wrong reasons sometimes, as we know. Well, discharge and tailings is a big issue as well, which this industry is addressing naturally. Regulations are going naturally a little bit against us. We've heard that as well before from Congressman. And last but not least, well, there's an economics issue because the price of water is also going up and the price of waste is dramatically going up as well. So what are the solutions? Well, there's a bunch of solutions. We've heard it before. Minnesota has managed that so pretty well. So not starting in a good place, but ending up in a good place. And that's a great example that demonstrates we can do it. But we need to look at different ways of addressing water. We need to leverage technology. We need to think about our operation end-to-end, from inlet to outlet. I'll come back to that. And leveraging as well digital technology that we've heard as well from my colleagues as well a little bit before. But it's also thinking about solutions that are financially attractive, that ultimately, if you implement them, you end up in a better place in terms of P&L because it makes it easier, obviously, so to get an investment agreed or to move with shareholders that do not see it exactly the same way. And the core idea in here is really to shift the paradigm on how we look at water. And that's what we've done in our own company, and many other companies have done it. And that's driven the way we innovate. It's basically to move from looking at water as a consumable, as a consumer good, that we take, we process, we dump, in whatever condition that can be, and that's going to be the problem of people downstream, so the river, or for our kids. Well, how can we change that and look at it in a way which is more like nature is doing it? A product that is reusable, recyclable forever, which is what's happening in the natural cycle extremely well. Well, can we do it the same way in our own operations, being in a mine, being in a steel mill, or being in a conference center, like this one as well? And that's changing the way we run operations and we run innovation in a dramatic way. And the problem is that water doesn't like to be recycled. As we know, you create scale, you create corrosion, you create fouling, you create a bunch of very difficult issues to address. Well, that's a good thing for innovation. We need new technology. We need especially digital technology to address that. And our company developed, so in 1988, before the internet even was existing, what we called connected chemistry, which is putting within chemistry trace materials that you can read from outside of the pipe, basically, and those, ultimately, the right type of chemistry or chemistries in order to make sure that the quality of water remains the same and can be reused and recycled forever. And we have today one of the most extensive Internet of Things, it was not called that way naturally in the past, platform, network, the way you want to call it in the world, where we manage and control 36,000 water systems anywhere around the world from one central location where we have 150 engineers making sure that systems are working properly, are optimized the right way, and do not impact environment in a negative fashion. You'll say, well, that's nice, but with water having almost no price in most places, and interestingly enough, it's in the places where it's the most water scarce that the price of water is the lowest. And you can go in Copenhagen, where there is way enough water, or in Minnesota, naturally, where the prices are much higher. Well, that's a challenge. It's a challenge, it's not a political statement here, it's a challenge for investments, naturally, because how do you justify an investment in order to save something that has theoretically no value? Well, there is two things that we need to consider here. The first one is by reusing and recycling water, you reuse and recycle energy, which is the main driver for a financial justification. You reduce as well the waste that you create. You optimize as well the productivity of your operation as well at the same time. And at the end of the day, it becomes a better deal. But if it's not enough, we've developed, so together with our sister companies, so Microsoft and TrueCost, the Water Risk Monetizer. Maybe some of you have seen it already. That's an online free system that you can go online, go and check for whatever address, whatever GPS location. You can understand how is it going to impact you in 3, 5, 10, and 15 years in terms of how much quality of water you're going to get, how much quantity are you going to have, what's the cost that's going to come at you, obviously assuming that subsidies and those things are remaining more or less the same going forward. And then suddenly you can look at your operations and your investments in a more forward-looking, long-term looking perspective. So I'd encourage you to go and have a look at this one because many companies are using it and some are even putting the price from the Water Risk Monetizer of water in their own internal P&Ls in order to drive the right behavior with quite much success. We know as well that we need to keep learning, we need to keep developing. And we've opened last year the first global water university with 1,300 people on our campus in Naperville, close to Chicago, where we have the world's best experts understanding the science of water, how water does interact with chemistry, with minerals, with steel, with whatever, and with infection, since it's one of the core areas that we're working on naturally. But it's also a place where we train and educate our people. But the idea was also to create that water university where you can come and join us in order to develop and learn as well, or teach you teams as well on how to master water and run even better operation for the future. We had almost 1,000 people that came over the last 8 months since we've opened that center in Naperville, so feel free to join us at any time. And I'd like just to conclude on two quick examples. I can't go too much in details. I can't mention names or too much where that is, naturally, because we respect the privacy of our customers in here. But we had a very significant customer in the phosphate industry in the Middle East, North African region, facing major water shortages. And the mines had to stop because of that, because of the quality of water that was coming in, or lack thereof, naturally. And how did we work together? Where we went together, understanding what's the issue, developed solutions that are good for the yield, good for the environment, and good for the bottom line as well of that company. It took us 2 years to get there, and now progressively we're putting in place those solutions that are pretty effective. And the other one is the one that, well, just mentioned before. So with Chile doing something very interesting, so to move from fresh water to seawater, with a few challenges, naturally, that we've heard before, to move it from the sea to the mountains. Well, there is a challenge in there. At the same time, well, there is one of the big challenges which is related to corrosion, and that's where we've learned from other industries that we serve. Power generation is often as well at the sea, and the cooling systems are run through seawater as well. We've developed solutions there in order to eliminate that corrosion, which is something that we can as well adapt, adjust, and implement for the mining industry quite successfully. So ultimately, I hope that I could engage towards that discussion, that there is a way to go even further than what we've thought so far, that we can build an even better industry in an even better world by doing what's right for your shareholder and what's right for the environment as well at the same time. So looking forward to discussing a little bit more afterwards in the dialogue. Thanks for your time.
Christoph, thank you very much. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce Rolf Wieberg. Rolf assumed leadership at the University of Minnesota Duluth's Natural Resources Research Institute in March of 2014 after a 25-year career in industry. As executive director, he is responsible for the operation, the integration, and performance of the Institute and its 130 full-time and 40 part-time student employees. The goal is fulfilling the University of Minnesota's applied research role in natural resource management and economic development as chartered by the Minnesota legislature in 1983. Today, NRRI is recognized as a model for bridging between the University of Minnesota and the state, the stakeholders, to define, develop, and deliver research solutions that balance economic development and entrepreneurial support with natural resource and environmental management. Ladies and gentlemen, Rolf Wieberg.
Good morning, everyone. It's great to be here. I have to admit that I'm a recent return to Minnesota, so I have to share with you that I'm actually here to rest today. Those of you that were here in Minneapolis to see a mere dusting of snow, up in Duluth yesterday I spent 5 hours shoveling snow, so I came down to the cities to rest this morning. So hopefully you haven't had that fun. What I'd like to do to talk a little bit this morning is having spent the 25 years with the DuPont company and then coming to the University of Minnesota, my alma mater, gives me an opportunity to look at both sides of the equation, so to speak, in terms of how do we approach some of these questions and how do we work together. So when I got an invitation to talk about innovation and how do we drive sustainability from that approach, it's pretty exciting to me to be able to talk about some of these things, not only from my past, but what we're doing here at the University of Minnesota. As I was introduced, the legislature created the Natural Resources Research Institute to help the Minnesota take advantage of our natural resources, many of those, all at one time, and understand how to do that in a sustainable fashion. So who are we? The institute is located in Duluth, Minnesota, as well as on the range, on the Iron Range, near Coleraine. The Duluth Lab's a 4-story research building. It's actually a remnant of the Cold War. We've got about 100 people working there. At Coleraine, 30 of you were there on Saturday. There's a former U.S. steel site. We've about 40 people working there, working on mineral processing, metallurgy, and renewable energy. And what sets NRI apart from the rest of the university is we are not an academic unit. We do teach students, but we do not confer degrees. We're there to do round-the-clock research on how do we use and value our natural resources in Minnesota. So our mission is to deliver. It's a favorite word of mine. If we're not delivering something, we're not doing our job. Research solutions. Solutions are much more comprehensive than a mere answer. And as our colleagues have talked about today, these solutions, these major solutions we need to move forward in a sustainable way across the world is going to take a lot of different disciplines to come together and work and find those solutions. Balancing economy, resource, and environment for resilient communities. And at the end of the day, NRI was created as an economic development tool for the state. At the end of the day, people need a job every day, every year, year in and year out, so that we have those resilient communities that can reinvest back into the economy and back into the environment. So when we think about our economy, we really think about 3 things. Energy, we've talked about that this morning. Water, show me an industry that can run without water. And materials. Food's a material, guys. Bottom line, those 3 things are what are running our economy, and what can we do to further that nexus, if you will, for success across the board. So as a result, NRI is built up of 6, I say, core competencies. Minerals, a real core for us, minerals and mineral processing. Water, understanding water, both in the environment as well as how we use it. Our forests and wildlife, understanding impacts. Renewable energy, bioeconomy, and of course, small business and entrepreneurial support, because when we have our big industry, we also have to have that secondary, tertiary economy to have a good, healthy economy. So that's what we bring together in an integrated fashion to work together to solve problems. So when we talk about research, we're applied research, and a lot of times people have a hard time, what is applied research versus basic research? Well, our role is to work in that area between basic, which is that blue sky, how can we understand the university we live in, to translating that to application, demonstration so that it's relevant to industry, and then delivery. Where we play across that. We do some basic, but it informs what we do in this translation and applied work. We depend greatly on our academic and government lab friends. The University of Minnesota, one of the biggest universities in the country. But we also cannot do this alone. We interact very, very strongly with our industry comrades, agencies, and non-government organizations to help focus that work so that when we do deliver, we're delivering the knowledge and tools, the practical solutions, demonstrated solutions in a commercializable fashion. So when we think about this innovation, a lot of the things we're going to be talking about through this whole meeting, there's a lot of challenges to the minerals industry. Iteration isn't going to get us there. We've tried that. It requires some significant innovation, as all 3 speakers before me pointed out. But at NRI, when we think about this innovation, what are we thinking about? We have 3 general topics we think about when we go and choose projects. One is reduce waste. Waste is just bad business. This was pounded into me for 25 years. If there's a way to reduce your waste, it's always somebody else's raw material, if you think about it. That's an opportunity. But reducing that waste, getting a higher yield and reduced costs, that's one of our focal points as we work with the various industries here in the state. Second, this seems obvious, broadening the portfolio and creating higher value. A lot of times we get very comfortable doing what we're doing, and unless you evolve, you die. And how do we help industry and opportunities be obviated to drive the economic resilience and retain the value in the state? And finally, resource stewardship. Embracing this as an opportunity. Sometimes it sounds pretty scary, but the bottom line is resource stewardship is really a differentiator for a competitive advantage. In the business I left most recently at DuPont, When we talked about sourcing of materials, our market share went up in Europe immediately. That's an expectation. And we do this today in Minnesota with our sustainably harvested wood. There's no reason we can't do that with minerals as well. It's a real challenge for us. I think it's something we can do. But finally, what we're really driving for is trying to build a portfolio of what we call integrated system-based solutions, not answers, system-based solutions. And when you integrate across professions and integrate across specialties, this is where the innovation and, frankly, the fun is. So we all know about these challenges. We talked about them here. There's the legacy mining issues. It's true. I come from the chemical industry. The chemical industry has the same issues. By the way, you are not going to find very many chemical industries that are independent of the mining industry. They're integrally related. Everybody learns things very, very quickly. Rick was talking about that earlier. Somebody can go on the internet and see something, and the communication is immediate as opposed to in the past. We have environmental challenges in terms of climate change, biodiversity, and water scarcity in different parts of the country. Industry is going to where the water is. Societal population is going up, as we heard. The needs and demands are also going up, and those demands for materials, energy, and water that keep our economy driving are going to be going up as well. How do we handle that? Increasing complexity, not only in how difficult the problems are, but in how difficult they are to solve with a lot of regulations that we need to be working through. And finally, this is something that's near and dear to me and to my colleagues. There is a national trend of decreasing investment in R&D at exactly the time we need it. Innovation requires investment. R&D is a bet. Sometimes a 10% return on a bet on R&D is actually a pretty darn good return, but helping Wall Street understand that can be a real difficulty. And that outlines one of the gaps that we try to focus on is where are the gaps between what's needed and what we're able to do, and what can the public entities do to help fill those gaps and work together. I'll come back to that in a moment. So approaches to drive forward. How do we get past the cloudy day, so to speak, and look for that path forward? We feel that engaging broadly and listening, even though it might be painful, everybody has a piece of the truth, and understanding and using that information by talking to everyone and opening, just as some of my colleagues talked about, drives providing transparency, but with context. Just putting a data set out there is not only crazy, but a little bit dangerous if you don't put it out there in terms of context that people can understand what you're trying to say. And here's my favorite is frame the question. On the basis of what you understand and the basis of data, frame the question, and then commit to action and commit to the research. And drive those innovations across and then share the risk. And this coming back again, how do we share risk across the public-private enterprise? Because not everybody can do it themselves. Not everybody has the ability to invest in the whole 9 yards. So that's where we are looking for places that we can actually help. And this comes up to this sustaining cycle, because we need to have an industry that sustains, because if we don't have a sustainable industry, we don't have a sustainable economy. It's that simple. So as we look at that cost, risk, benefit, that's a real focal point. Really understand, that's where our research and development has to be focused, to really understand the true risk, the true cost, the true benefit of these opportunities we have. That requires a lot of characterization, understanding. That takes investment. After that, you've got some co-education, back and forth, that listening, and then understand what does that impact management planning we've heard about already with some of the earlier speakers. Bottom line, that defines the social license. And in my past life, that was talked about on a regular basis in terms of how do we get it and how do we maintain it, recognizing full well it doesn't belong to us. It belonged to the public. And we had to make sure that we maintained that relationship so we could drive shared goals, drive best-in-class performance, not be afraid of that peer review, and go back and look at that cost risk benefit every day. So that's a focal point that we're taking as we look at the natural resource challenges around the state of Minnesota and, quite frankly, the region, because it's a strategic issue as well as it is an economic issue. So one of the things that we've done in the last several years is partner with industry, partner with NGOs, and partner with our legislative leaders in the governor's office to look at where are some of these gaps that a research unit similar to NRI as part of the University of Minnesota can assist where there's some open places that could help move forward. So here in 2016, we worked with the legislature for a 2-year infusion to look at large project demonstrations for what was called the Mining Innovation Initiative. And there are basically 3 parts to that. One was to look at improving the opportunities for our iron mining industry. One, increasing the yield of the iron out of what we do mine already, focusing on the more oxidized ores as you go to the western part of the state. And then also building an evaluated iron simulator so we can participate in the electric arc furnace business in this country instead of just the blast furnace alone. This has been done both of those projects have been done in collaboration with the iron industry with support from the Iron Mining Association, who we work with very closely. Another piece of what we did is we received funding to create a resource atlas of northeastern Minnesota. This was brought about because there was a lot of frustration on the part of some of our legislators, and they have somebody come in and say, we would like to do the following with a natural resource, whether it was mining or timber or other. But they have piles and piles of data, and everybody has their own data set, and they have everybody coming in asking to do what they want with their own data set. And one of the frustrating parts was that they didn't know who to listen to. What we've done, we've created basically it's a super app, if you will. It goes on a computer that can access all the data sets, vetted data sets, across the state. We're up to about 175 now. So when you go to a section of the state and want to know what's going on there, you can understand the mineral content, water issues there, demographics, infrastructure, all the things you might want to know as you start considering taking advantage of a natural resource in that area. So it's been a really successful tool. We're looking to continue that work. And finally, the other piece in this state, yes, we have a very low sulfate standard that stands at least today. We have a very unique limitation here because of the wild rice and the treaties with the Native Americans. And we know that we need to reduce sulfate. We don't care where it has to go, but it's one of the things that we have to be working on. When we went to the PDAC conference last year, we talked to many of the water companies, and nobody's really working on 10 ppm because it's not a drinking water standard. So Minnesota has a very, very unique challenge here that we're collaborating with a number of industrial partners to try to take some ideas and bring them to fruition. And last year, we finished something with the Minnesota Ilmenite Initiative, which was the support from the Department of Iron Range Resources Rehabilitation in the University of Minnesota to pilot a new hydrometallurgy approach that allows us to isolate high-purity titanium dioxide from Minnesota ilmenite. Up to this point, the manganese content was too high. We got a dingy yellow-white pigment, which is not going to be very satisfying to anybody. We were able to get to 99.8% purity. This is important because this hydrometallurgy is also is very conversant with the other mineral opportunities that are in the state as well as elsewhere. So in doing these, we found these gaps. We continue to find these gaps. We continue to work with the legislature and continue to work with the industry to try to find out where we can help, not get in the way, but help accelerate and reduce the risks to entry. So in the end, looking forward, it's about managing the maps. We got 3 maps here. There's about 300 more. Clearly, we have a lot of water in Minnesota. That's industrially relevant. But at the same time, that middle map is a very, very rich map that NRI has built with a lot of help from the Minnesota Geological Survey and the U.S. Geological Survey. This state has unbelievable mineral wealth. We also have very, very rich forests and rich farmland in the south. Balancing how we use all those maps is a trick, and how do we make those decisions, as our colleague talked about, for our kids in the future. It's opportunity and sound long-term decisions, driving sustainable industries, protecting the environment, and having those resilient communities that we need to keep alive. So one final thought I wanted to share with you is a quote that I found a number of years ago when I was talking about sustainability and talking about innovation. was that learning and innovation go hand in hand. There is no innovation unless you're learning every day. And when you stop learning, you're not going to be innovating. The arrogance of success is to think that what you did yesterday will be sufficient for tomorrow. And it's a real challenge to all of us. Because if you think about it, if we're satisfied with where we are, we just lost. The pushing forward, pushing the envelope, looking for those odd places where technology may or may not fit, to look for those solutions, not the answers, but the solutions is really our focus, and I think it's a collective focus of the group here. So with that, I'll thank you. It's a real thrill to be able to address the group here. Welcome to Minnesota from a heartfelt place, being a prodigal son myself, and I wish you all a fantastic convention, because every year I come to these, there's always about 400 things I learn. So thank you.
Rolf, thank you. Thanks, everybody. So we'll do a little Q&A. Guys, I think you each have a microphone there if they're clicked on and ready to go, and we'll get after it because we don't have a lot of time. But we have to start, I think, with Rene, because he's the only person on stage that has had a major motion picture made of him. So, sorry. How did you get assigned the role to rescue the miners? Because I know people are curious about that. And is the movie accurate? Did you like it? Does it portray what happened pretty well?
Well, in reality, there was a team, not just one person. That's the first thing. Well, at that time, we were working in El Teniente mine, which is the largest underground mine in the world. It's in Chile, and this particular mine, San Jose mine, was not a very good mine in terms of safety characteristics. So we basically were appointed by the chairman of the board, who received a call from the president of the country, and he did ask for us to go there and to do our best. The odds were against us. I mean, everybody knew that, even the president, but he made the call, and of course we were up to the challenge. As you know, we miners are very much into safety and to save our colleagues' lives, and we knew that that would be a very difficult call, and we spent 70 days there until we finally rescued them, and it was the experience of the life, you know. And sure. And the actual movie, I didn't like it. I think it doesn't reflect what happened there, but it was a Hollywood movie, so what can you expect?
Hey, Bob, 3M had a little role, kind of. What was that? That was interesting.
Yeah, at the same time of this unfortunate accident, we were commercializing very small projectors. And conveniently, it was small enough to fit down a 7-inch hole. And the miners were able to watch soccer. They were able to see videos of their families. And I understood earlier that that was a real turning point in momentum, and the encouragement that the workers felt that they were going to be saved, and the connectedness to the outside world. We talked so many times today about connectedness, and when you're in a mine far under the earth and without the ability to communicate, it's a very lonely feeling. So sure. We played a small role in encouraging that group of 33.
And Renee, even though it was a lot of Hollywood, was your wife pleased that Antonio Banderas played you at least?
No, it wasn't me. It was the Minister of Mines, yes. But I met Juliette Binoche.
The heavier issues, you all kind of presented your challenges. I don't know if we need to go over those, but maybe more specifically, who helps you overcome those? Is it industry? Is it groups? Is it organizations? Is it government? As you looked at these challenges that you presented, talk a little bit about solutions moving forward and how these things are met and what they're done. And is it public? Is it private? Where does some of that come from? And I throw it open to everybody.
Yeah, so in our case, it's about partnerships. So what we know is that we don't know all the answers, for sure. So every time we face a challenge, we try to put that challenge on the stage, and then we ask for help, for reputable vendors, contractors, universities, trying to understand what the problem is. Sometimes that we think that the problem is what we think it is, but in reality it's not. And we should be open to that. I would say that on the technology side, in terms of automation, teleoperation, we have been to be open to piloting a lot of initiatives. Some companies are not very good on that, and they prefer to follow what other guys are doing. Particularly in Chile, we are very good on that, on opening the doors and trying to learn together. There is a lot of investment going on, but it's not as much as other sectors. My previous boss, Marco Defani from Anglo American, he was always saying that we in the mining sector, we are investing on R&D 1/10 what the oil and gas sector is investing. So we should be doing more on that, and we should stop building old new mines all the time. We should, challenge our thoughts and challenge the way we are seeing mining for the futures. And there are a lot of initiatives happening in the world now regarding to that.
Maybe to build on that, one way is naturally to learn from other industries. You mentioned the oil and gas naturally. It can be in consumer goods as well, where you have a very direct relationship with the consumer that's telling you if they like your product or not, or go to their politicians as well to say, well, that's screwed up or it's good. And interestingly enough, the solutions that those guys have to come up with can be also usable for our own industries that are sometimes more following industries.
When I think of safety, one of the first things that comes to mind is collaboration. And I think one of the fun things about working in that field is whether you're in the pharmaceutical industry or mining or heavy equipment, safety is something that we can collaborate on across companies. It's, one bad accident in an industry is a black mark for many players in that industry. And safety, collaborating on safety is a way for us to overcome that. It's a way to reduce risks. It's a way to gain, I think, more support from politicians and more support from NGOs when they see the industry ganging up on a problem, trying to eliminate it.
I'll just add, in our experience, engaging broadly is really, really key, because whether you agree with everybody, they all have a piece of the truth in their conversation. And I think one of the things we have to make sure we do very carefully, but with a broad footprint, is frame the questions. And don't be satisfied with the first question. Always ask why 4 to 5 times, and you really get to the core of what is the unknown and what you need to do about it. I think it's very, very common, and we all do it. You hear a problem and you immediately think of the solution. And we got to stop thinking we got the solutions and reframe the problem, make sure we're doing the innovative work to go after it, I think.
And I'd say for me, it's been seeking the advice and the counsel of others. There's always people that are out there that if you have an open mind, they've got a lot of good ideas, and a lot of them are smarter than you are. And if you keep an open mind and seek that advice, that counsel, and once you've gathered the best information you can, then make a commitment and go for it. Be determined to succeed, and if you fail, you just dust yourself off and figure out where you went wrong and go after it again.
You guys said on so many things. When I tell a story as a television person, it's very, very easy, and people opposed to mining make it really easy to tell the story. It's much more difficult to get and again, the picture is much bigger of why is this important and lack of mineral resources and how they impact life. Have you had success that you can share with people about how to deliver a better narrative about why these things are important? You mentioned science always wins, but it seems that science doesn't always win. I mean, these arguments are very emotional. I know you did the We Chapas. Any advice, any thoughts on how you can better present your narrative, how you can better engage with some of the people that are very opposed to you, how you can go ahead and show that you might be able to do things in a way that everyone wins? It's a difficult question.
I think it is, because I think we've done a terrible job on that as a mining sector. We haven't shown to the world the case for mining. We normally talk about ourselves. We talk about our projects, how big they are. We talk about the whole tracks, how big they are, the shovels, the rigs, everything is big, and the bigger the better for us. But on the other side, you've got people saying, why are you doing that? Why is that for? And we haven't explained why mining is important for society. As Igor was saying, as Congressman Northern was saying at the beginning, we use mining for everything, and we haven't been able to explain that to the world. So I think just now we have started trying to share that information, demonstrated the case for mining from iPhones to cars to textiles. Mining is everywhere. We need to do it better, of course, in terms of the way we mine, and we are doing good steps on that direction. But at the same time, we should be more active, more proactive, more vocal on expressing to the world why we are here. I don't see that today society has seen that picture already.
This is such a great point, and it's also, well, how do we react to things that do not work as they should? Because sometimes, well, we've talked about safety issues as well there. Well, talking openly about the issues we have builds trust as well. And if I think about the industry that we're in more broadly, the chemical industry, and looking at the American Chemistry Council, where all the chemical and petrochemical companies are together in the United States, well, we try to understand that question a little bit by starting to say, well, how does the broad public think about us? Our kids, the electors, and we realized that, well, they don't think that we are a good industry, which is a problem for our industry because people do not buy things from us, but at the same time, it's hard to get new talent joining our industry as well because they say, well, hell, I don't want to join that industry that doesn't have the right image. And we end up in places which was fairly critical for this industry, where retailers that are selling the end products ultimately that we produce, well, had their campaign of saying chemical-free products. And when you think about it, you say, what does it mean, chemical-free product? Doesn't even exist. But that's what big retailers, without naming them, so in the US are trying to accomplish. And that's really, so to your point, so showing how much of a work we need to do to explain what do we do, why is it good, why is it essential? So to use your iPhone to get your next electric car, well, without the mining industry, without the chemical industry, that's not going to work. But it starts really by realizing that our image is not as good as it could be.
Frank, that's one of the most vexing and challenging questions that I think you could have asked, and something I've struggled with. You know, I'm old enough to remember Cedric Adams on WCCO radio. CCO radio and has been the largest audience anywhere in the country. And he'd go on the news every night at 10 o'clock. And when the news was over at 10:30, if you flew over Minnesota, it's like somebody flipped the master switch. Everybody in America turned off their lights and went to bed. But you didn't go to bed till you'd heard the end of the day. Now we go for Frank and Amelia before we go to bed.
I put many people to sleep. I do it every night.
Well, sometimes we go to sleep a little early. But the point is here that things constantly change. Television came into being, and more people started watching television. We've always had our journals, or at least for the last several hundred years, and read those. Now they're telling us, as politicians, that 70% of the youth in America are getting all their news and information from social media. And 50% of the country is, and that's a growing. So, I mean, that's just one little thing you have to say to yourself, okay, if we're going to communicate the importance of mining and the role that it plays in all of our lives, we better get busy on the social media. I think we've done a pretty good job overall. But the opponents of mining and the benefits of mining have done a pretty good job, too. And I think we do have to do a better job, and we have to all use all the resources, the radio, the television, the newspaper, now the social media, and other social and political organizations. We do oftentimes make the mistake of spending a little too much time just talking to one another. And we got to do a better job of getting out beyond our own circle and use all of the vehicles that are out there to get our message out there.
Rolf, go ahead. I know you wanted to add something.
Yeah, I just add to that. I think a mindset that I think would be quite useful is to go at this from a level of partnership. When you resort to an us against them, you've already lost part of the conversation, and it hurts. I've been in that conversation a number of times in the past, but continued listening, I think, is and going at it from a partnership and drawing that line from your car, the things that we need to live with in order to have our standard of living, and drawing those lines and connections to the materials they come from, most people don't know. I mean, most people don't know where their milk comes from for breakfast, for example. And you're just joking about we need a good milk commercial.
Got milk? Got mining?
Milk? Got iron? Yeah. I think there's some things that are starting to happen that way, but looking at how to engage from a partnership point of view and driving those linkages would help. It's education.
Speaking of education, I talk about R&D, and millennials, I think how few of them, they think more chemical free as opposed to I want to be an engineer or I want to get involved. I know 3M has some really innovative things to bring in young people, not necessarily mining, but into your universe. Why only 10% on R&D? What do you need, Rolf, to get more people involved? You guys all are talking about, I can tell, a very similar problem, but I'm not sure if there's a lot of great solutions to either spend more money on research and development or to get more young people involved.
Yes, yes, and yes. I think I would. Yes, I've spent in my career, I've had opportunities to talk to parents and students in high schools, and there's a. I think it's growing, it's getting better, but there was for a while, people didn't see any reason to go into STEM because it was dirty or it wasn't what they want. It's hard. You have to know math. My God, But I think there's a number of things going around in the country. The Starbase program is selecting 5th graders to go and bring them in and solve problems like we're going to live in Mars. They use math. They didn't even know they were using the math. They're starting to get engaged. So I think there's a big piece there, and we need to invest in how do we engage kids in the grade schools before they get to high school and think they know what they're doing. What do we need? I mean, unfortunately, we need money. I mean, that's why I like Rick so much. No, but seriously, I think it comes down to if you can't have a future if you're not willing to invest in it. And I think that message, in addition to the partnership message, that message, if you don't pay for it, you're not going to get it. People at some point understand that. But when people think about research and development, my roommate in college always thought research, that just means you're looking for your pencil. I don't know what that meant, but that's what he thought it meant. We need to be educating people about what is research, what's the fundamental need for it. NASA is a great example, but it's quote unquote old now. What do we need? And those are the things I think.
I think our industries, whichever ones that we're in, we need to be seen as approachable. I remember as a 6th grader going on a tour up to, must have been Silver Bay, Minnesota, and seeing taconite processing, and another trip maybe as a 7th grader going into a mine and seeing real people that were friendly, that cared about the world, that cared about us as students at that young, impressionable age. So how can we do a better job of making our industry approachable and making our companies seen as ambassadors for not only the industry that we're in, but for the world? I haven't heard such a magnificent case made for mining today until Congressman Nolan. You made a brilliant case for the industry. I hope that's on tape because it's true. And growing, I was a product of a forest products company, so I was defending the paper mill. We all know what those smell like, and just on the doorstep to the iron range. And that was the entire livelihood of our communities depended on those natural resources. So I think making sure people understand. We don't understand when we go to the supermarket, where do those things come from? I think we need to tell that story in a poignant way.
I think there's the understanding, but there's also how much value you truly create. Because, well, we get more R&D money when you make more money. As well, so it needs to come from somewhere naturally, and we get more talent as well when you have more resources and the impact you make is bigger as well at the same time. So I'm wondering if our industry, if the mining industry, so shouldn't maybe think it a little bit that way and to say, well, how do we do something which is not just good for all products that we have every day, but that it creates a better world as well. That at least the way we're trying to sell our company, where we're hiring thousands of people every year, actually it's because they like the journey. It's making an impact, it's creating a better world, and I think the mining industry can completely be part of that journey too.
And Renee, talk about a little bit about the R&D. Why is the investment not where you think it should be
in terms of the dollars?
Well, I think it's changing, though. I think we haven't been that good in the past, but now we have realized how important it is. Of course, there are technological challenges as the ore grade decline, safety, as was mentioned before, is also always a challenge, environmental, of course. But we are also seeing more, I would say, CEO awareness about the importance of innovation. Last year, I was with ICMM and the CEOs of the, as I said before, 25 mining companies. They decided on what should be an aspirational goal for the mining sector. Just one, like quick one. And they agreed on innovate on alternatives to conventional tailing dams, for instance. So after Samarco, for instance, there was a huge call regarding, tailing dams safety. And they agreed on that. So they challenged themselves in, why don't we work together to see whether we can go further on this and we can provide another alternatives to this kind of conventional tailing dams. And we are working on that already. So we are seeing a lot of opportunities. At the same time, ICMM has been more vocal in terms of what mining is for. There is a campaign called Mining with Principles now, which is in social media, actually. And we are sharing with the world what we are doing, what kind of innovations we are implementing, and the case for mining in the society. I think these are the kind of a step that we should follow nowadays.
I'll bring it up because you said everything was political, even my suit coat, which was very interesting. Are immigration policies in this country and around the world changing how young people get involved or how this country can compete when it comes to mining? Are any of you seeing that?
Excuse me, I didn't hear you. I was busy on my iPad. I told him I didn't hear him because I was busy on my iPad talking to somebody else. Yeah, they're changing. You get into a room with a dozen kids, or you go to an important workshop or important conference, and a few people are actually listening. They're all on their iPads talking to someone else. And I personally, at the risk of sounding like the old curmudgeon, they ain't like they used to be. I don't think it's good. I really don't. Our linguists tell us that anywhere from 50 to 90% of all communications are nonverbal. So I can say this is really some conference, I can say this is really some conference. Now, if you're not looking at me, how the hell do you know what I said? In one case I said it was a lousy conference, and the other said it was a great conference. So the children of today are communicating much differently than they used to. They're not using what we used to call the King's language. They're not writing cursive. They're not studying civics. They're devising a new coded language that has nothing like the one that we used to. This represents a real challenge for us. Maybe it's good. I haven't decided yet. But it's definitely different, which requires us to respond in a different way than what we are used to doing. That's my thought on that. With regard to R&D, I think the fact that Minnesota has historically invested a tremendous amount of money in education has contributed much to our success. I'll sound a little bit like the Chamber of Commerce here, but I don't know many people know it, but Minnesota ranks 4th among the 50 states for the number of Fortune 500 companies. And when I was in my international business, I was so proud no matter where I went. I'm running into Minnesota companies, 3M in particular. And companies like 3M and Ecolabs, they've invested heavily. They've been world leaders. They're cited in business schools for the amount of money that they spend in research and development. And what Alexander Pope, his education forms the common mind. And we've invested heavily, and I think we have to continue in our business, in our politics, in our public institutions to invest heavily in education and, of course, research and development in particular. So we create that kind of mindset where it's a journey. It's not a destination. You may be successful in what you're doing today, but if you're not educating yourself, if you're not doing the R&D, if you're not figuring out the next and best way to do it or communicate and whatnot, you're in trouble. So we need to constantly preach and teach that mindset if we want to continue to be successful in our business, in our communities, and advancing the quality of our life.
And we need good immigration. And we need good immigration, which was
certainly
part of your
do,
question
yeah.
as well before. Naturally, I'm an immigrant. Some of you guys are probably as well. So most of this country is made out of immigrants, 99%, I guess. And it's always sad to see people coming and studying in this country, getting great degrees, and then going abroad and competing against the US. I say, well, that's an interesting process in a way in here, whereas we could get the best minds coming and joining this country, this industry as well, to help us thrive even more in the future. Not an easy debate, naturally, but I think we need to address it too.
So, so your experience, I mean, international people and companies, 3M, very international. Rolf, I'm sure you have students from all over. Is it different now than it was 2 or 3 years ago? Or is it different than it was 5 years ago? Is it better? Is it worse? Do you see more people from China, India applying to come here, or do you see more of a flight of them leaving? Where are we at?
You want to start?
Well, I would start by saying the political process has changed dramatically, and not for the good. For several hundred years, including when I served with Lincoln, and
Great victory.
yeah. Now, for several hundred years, this country operated under what we call open rules. So if you had a budget, if you had immigration issues, if you had security issues, they came through the committee. Anybody could offer their ideas, their amendments, same way you'd get to the floor of the House. This Congress is now the most closed Congress ever recorded in history. It's like, okay, we'll have a $658 billion defense bill. You can vote on it Tuesday night at 6:30. No amendments. Really? Have you not heard enough about immigration, in the past 5 or 6 years? There has not been a bill before the floor of the House on immigration in 6 years, even though all this jabber and chatter about it. So that's not good, in my judgment, because I have no doubt that we could come to a bipartisan good agreement that would provide a path to citizenship for immigrants from all over the world in a measured way that would be compatible with what our employment and needs are in this country. If a bill would come before the Congress, okay? So, but it doesn't. I'll be surprised if it does, quite frankly. But on the other side of that coin is, if there's not going to be a vote today until 5:30 on a bill where nobody could offer an amendment, what do you do all day? Well, both the Republicans and Democrats have call centers across the street. Just shut up, go across the street and raise money. You got another $10, $20, $30 million campaign coming up. Just concentrate on getting yourself reelected. So, bottom line, we need to change the way we do politics. We need to change the way we do our campaigns. We need to get back to the collaborative democratic process that was such an integral part of our success. I just saw a study here just the other day on the health of democracy in the world, and the United States has dropped to 23rd among the democratic nations in the country for the health of their democratic state. So yeah, that needs to change as far as, I for one am concerned.
I think you should stay for 5 or 10 more years. We would vote for you. No, well, we need to realize that we live in a competitive world, and the best teams win, and the best teams are usually so formed by the best talent as well. So many great talents are in this country, want to come in this country, but let's face it, if we look at Korea, they're almost educating as many engineers as the US does to that. Well, that's a little bit problematic when we look at the sizes of the two countries as such. China used to send their best talents here to get educated and go back. Well, they're really starting to have great universities over there and stay there as well. So if we think it that way, that we want to keep winning, well, we will need to get the great talent here too.
As we wrap things up, maybe your best minute or 90 seconds, the sub-theme for this year is step change, things that you might want to see change or things you're going to try to change yourselves, and then we'll go ahead and break off and do our other things. But if you each want to do maybe a minute on that quickly, which is tough, but Rolf, we'll start with you.
Hey, when you look at the definition of step change is something that's probably disruptive, something that's uncomfortable, but it's something you have to commit to. I think when we look at a step change for the mining industry, we definitely need to be engaging much more aggressively in terms of what we were talking about, educating people where things come from, driving the value of what materials do in people's lives. So I think as a step change, embracing that in sometimes difficult conversation, embracing the approach of life cycle analysis and talking about it openly is probably a way to manage that conversation and, quite frankly, take control of it and teach people about how we do things, why we do them, and what's the best path for the future. As we talked about, we want to make sure our kids are proud and our kids' kids are proud of the decisions we make today.
Thank you.
One of the dialogues that we're having in the last year at our company has been around, for 20 years we've been very much about doing things better, a little bit better every day, and processes like Lean Six Sigma help us have that constructive framework where we can drive improvements and almost be able to predict how much improvement we're going to get. Today the dialogue is, what are we doing different? Different is hard because different is fraught with risk. Different is fraught with bigger spending usually in areas with increased risk. And for individuals also there's a risk for being different. Different people are disruptors. They're sometimes not seen as that great collaborator. So we're trying to intelligently manage that mix of people, enough people that are willing to do things different, management that gives them the air cover to be different in terms of budget and in terms of protection for coming up with revolutionary new ideas. Better's easy, different's hard.
I would say two things. One is if it isn't extracted from Mother Earth, it probably doesn't exist, okay? Number one, be mindful of that and preach that, whether it be food, agriculture, forestry, of course, mining. And then secondly, I've always felt that gracious living and good politics and good business is in no small measure about gratitude. And we have so much to be grateful for. And the way you express your gratitude is by paying it forward and giving something back. And I think a bit of that has been lost in our value system and the way we think. And I feel a compelling need. We all need to be more grateful and look for and find ways to give something back to our community, our family, our politics, and our way of life.
Well said. This is a great industry. The question is, how much greater could we make it? And it's an industry that we will need for all our future dreams. It can be space, it can be electronics, it can be for your iPad, it can be for social media, it can be for electric cars, it can be for medical solutions. For everything that we have in our dreams to build in the future, we need this industry. So how can we connect these dreams that so many industries are building with what the mining industry is doing? And then is the question, how do we operate and how much better can we become in the way we operate? René mentioned those tailings dams. Well, shouldn't they disappear in the future? Shouldn't we find solutions in order to manage our operations in a better way? When we think if we connect those two things, that mining is part of the future dreams, and second, the way we operate is good for society, well, I think we have a home run.
Yeah, in my opinion, there are two big challenges, one internal and the other one external. Internal is very much what Christoph was saying, the way we mine. I think we are in the boundaries of new technologies. You're going to be listening a lot about waterless mining nowadays. And there is another initiative, an international one, called the zero waste mining. This idea has applied to the X-Prize here in the US. And I think we should be seeing a lot of new ideas coming from those kind of initiatives. And on the external side, I couldn't stress more the importance of connecting the work we do with society about the importance of mining for the sustainable future. Just a short one. 1 month ago, we sponsored the first race of Formula E in Chile, okay, which is the equivalent to the Formula One but electric cars. And we were the title sponsor. So based on that, we ran several activities, panels, conferences regarding electromobility and the importance of copper for the sustainable future. Everybody was so happy when we were talking about, what mining was doing in terms of, wind power supply, solar supply, and all the good things we were doing at the sites. But as soon as we started talking about the merits of mining to the sustainable future, we had a big pushback from NGOs. And I was expecting that, but what I wasn't expecting is that no matter the information we were providing, they continued to pursue that idea that no, mining is bad and you're not going to change that. So we decided that maybe that 15% is there, but we need to work hard for the other 85% to understand the case for mining.
Awesome. Gentlemen, on behalf of SME, thank you for coming from all over the state, all over the country, and all over the world. You're panelists. Thank you very much. Right now, I'd like to invite Dave Carnegie, SME Executive Director, to the podium. Dave.
Well, first of all, thank you, Frank, and thank you to this panel. They did a phenomenal job this morning, and I just want to thank all of them for being here today. How about another round of applause for them? And Frank, I want to let you know we're going to watch the 10 o'clock news tonight, not the 5 or the 6. For two reasons. One is I had a little trouble sleeping last night, and I understand I might be able to sleep better tonight. But second of all, at 4:30 in this room here this afternoon, I invite all of you all to be here to see the Move Mining final competition this year. It was a great experience last year when we started it. I know the room was too small. We're going to have this big, huge room this year, so there should be no seating problems, and I hope to see all the seats full as we look at 5 people who are trying to change the conversation of mining and 5 groups who are going to improve what we do as far as going forward and telling a better story. So I hope all of you will be here at 4:30 today. Second thing I want to do is I'm a big believer in collaboration and partnerships, and I think it's really important that we work with other groups because no single group has the ability to carry the right message all the time and be all places at all times. So this year in August 24th, 25th, and 26th, we're going to be in Ottawa, Canada, working with our friends from TMS and working with our friends from CIM METSOC. And 3 groups are going to get together, and we're going to have an Extraction 2018 event, and it's going to bring all the best in the extraction, mineral processing world together, hydrometallurgy, et cetera, and we're going to have a fantastic triumvirate conference there of the 3 organizations. The 2 people that I want to introduce here are Mike Moats and Boyd Davis. I think they're sitting over here somewhere. Stand up, guys. They are leading, Mike is leading it for SME, and Boyd is leading it for CIM METSOC. And if you have any questions about the program, those are the 2 guys to see, but I hope to see you in Ottawa this coming August. And finally, good idea. And finally, going back to collaboration and partnership, I want to invite Ann Williamson and Liz Kramer to the stage. As you all know, this has been a great partnership with the Minnesota SME section this year. They've been actively engaged. They really came to the SME board in 2011, 2012, and some of the leadership at that time petitioned that the SME hold their annual conference up here in Minnesota. I think you guys remember I said it was 55 degrees in Minnesota last year when we were in Denver. Well, I just want to let you know at 10 o'clock this morning it was 24 here. It was also 24 in Denver, though. So, but anyway, Liz, I want to thank you very, very much for all your leadership with the Minnesota section and helping put today's session together and coordinating all the volunteers in the Minnesota side to put all the activities that we did. Hey, they must be pretty prescriptive of what's going to happen because you know we had a curling event yesterday. And then the men's U.S. team won the curling event. And that doesn't happen very often, maybe never. Ann Williamson I also want to thank you. Ann's our overall conference chair this year, and she's done a marvelous job working with all the division program chairs and putting the whole event together. So anyway, I want to say thank you to Ann as well for all her efforts in putting the overall program together as the overall conference chair. With that, the exhibits are open. There's lunch in there for everyone, and we look forward to seeing you around this week, and of course, we'll see you in Denver next year. Thanks so much.